My name is Hannah Pierce. I'm 29 years old, and at 9:30 on a quiet Tuesday morning, my bank froze my account over a $120,000 debt I never agreed to carry. I don't miss payments. I don't gamble with credit. I work in compliance. But when I walked into the branch with my ID in hand, my parents were already sitting in the manager's office, calling it family business. They said it was temporary. They said I was overreacting. What they didn't say was how my phone number had been replaced, how a signature appeared that wasn't mine, and how close they were to moving the final transfer before the system locked everything down. If your own parents decided your credit was a resource instead of your identity, what would you do? Stay quiet to protect the family name, or protect yourself and let the paper trail speak? I chose the paper trail, and what it uncovered changed everything. My debit card was declined at 9:30 on a clear Tuesday morning in Raleigh, and I knew before the pump screen flashed, "See attendant," that something was wrong. I do not carry balances. I do not miss payments. I work in financial compliance for a regional healthcare network, and numbers have always been the one thing in my life that behaved. The second my phone rang, I saw Piedmont Federal Bank on the caller ID. Mark Delaney, the branch manager at the Cameron Village location, where I have kept my accounts since I was 22, did not waste time with pleasantries. "Hannah," he said, his voice tight in a way I had never heard before, "your profile is under an immediate freeze. There is a $120,000 business credit line showing a balance, and the application has been flagged for signature authorization." For a moment, the world narrowed to the hum of traffic and the smell of gasoline. "That's not possible," I said evenly. "I haven't opened any credit." "I need you at the branch with identification," he replied. "There are individuals here attempting to resolve the hold. They identified themselves as your parents." The word parents landed harder than the number. I drove straight to the branch with both hands on the wheel and the rigid blue document folder I keep in my car pressed against my passenger seat. It holds my passport, copies of my Social Security documentation, and confirmation letters from the credit freeze I placed 4 years ago after a minor data breach at work. I have always believed in paper. When I walked into the lobby, my father was already inside Mark's office. Thomas Pierce has run Pierce Equipment Repair for 30 years. He stood with his shoulders squared, his gray hair combed back the way he wears it when he is about to negotiate. My mother, Linda Pierce, sat beside him in a floral blouse, her posture calm, almost patient, as if we were waiting for a prescription to be filled instead of discussing a 6-figure debt. Mark looked relieved when he saw me. He is in his early 50s, steady and procedural, the kind of man who double-checks his own signatures. "Hannah," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk, "we have a business rewards card issued under your Social Security number, personally guaranteed by you. The system froze it this morning because the signature authorization did not match historical records." My father exhaled sharply. "It's family business," he said. "We needed short-term flexibility to secure new equipment inventory. You've always said you believe in growth." I did not sit. "I did not authorize any application," I said. My voice did not rise. "And I have a full credit freeze in place." Mark turned his monitor slightly toward me. The screen showed a dense grid of fields: name, date of birth, Social Security number, mine. Beneath that, an electronic signature block. "The application was submitted 20 days ago," he said. "It was flagged this morning before a final transfer could clear. We need to determine who authorized the signature." He clicked once more. And there on the recovery contact line was a phone number that was not mine. The phone number, listed under the recovery contact field, belonged to my mother. I recognized it instantly. I have dialed it on birthdays, on Sundays, on the quiet evenings when guilt feels heavier than logic. It was the same number she has used for over a decade, printed in tidy black ink on the business cards for Pierce Equipment Repair. "That's not my number," I said. My father shifted his weight, irritated rather than embarrassed. "We put Linda's contact down so we wouldn't miss any alerts," he said. "You're busy, Hannah. You don't always answer unknown calls." My mother's expression didn't change. She folded her hands in her lap, the way she does in church, composed and faintly wounded. "We weren't hiding anything," she said softly. "It's family business. We're trying to expand the warehouse. You've seen the books. Cash flow tightens before it grows." Mark cleared his throat. "Ms. Pierce," he said, carefully, glancing at me before continuing. "The recovery. Contact and authentication codes are legally tied to the primary account holder. Any modification to that information requires explicit authorization." My father gave a dismissive wave. "Authorization," he repeated, as if the word were ornamental. "We've been running that company since before Hannah could drive. She benefits from it. This is just leveraging family assets." Family assets. I stayed standing, the blue folder still tucked under my arm. I could feel the edge of my passport pressing through the cardboard. Solid, real. "I placed a full credit freeze 4 years ago," I said. "With all 3 bureaus. No new lending should process without my direct confirmation." Mark nodded. "That's correct. The system shows a freeze. The application bypassed the initial inquiry block because it was coded as an internal business relationship with a personal guarantee. That's part of why it was escalated." Escalated. The word hung in the room. My mother leaned forward slightly. "Hannah, sweetheart, we needed flexibility. The supplier required a deposit for the new lift equipment. If we don't secure it now, another shop will. This is about survival. Survival." Pierce Equipment had been about survival every year of my adult life. Every downturn, every inventory mistake, every slow quarter had come wrapped in that same language. And each time, the expectation had been quiet cooperation. "I did not sign anything," I said again, more to the room than to them. My father's jaw tightened. "You're acting like we forged your name," he said, his tone hardening. "We submitted what was necessary to keep the business moving. You have excellent credit. You weren't using it." Mark's voice shifted from cautious to procedural. "The issue is not usage," he said. "The application was flagged because the digital signature did not align with historical patterns on file. Additionally, there was a change to the recovery email address during submission." I looked back at the screen. Below my name and social security number was a second line I hadn't noticed before. The recovery email was not mine either. It was tied to a commercial mailbox address on Capitol Boulevard, Pierce Equipment's registered mailing location. I felt something colder than anger settle into place. "This is not a misunderstanding," I said quietly. "What is the next step in your fraud procedure?" My mother inhaled sharply, as if I had said something obscene. "Hannah," she said, lowering her voice, "don't turn this into a legal spectacle. We can draft a repayment schedule. We'll cover the minimums until revenue stabilizes. No one has to make this ugly. No one." Mark did not look at them this time. He looked at me. "The next step," he said, "is to pull the device and IP logs tied to the application submission. If you wish to proceed, we'll need to bring in our fraud specialist. Device logs. IP logs." I adjusted my grip on the blue folder. "Yes," I said. Bring them in. Erica Boone introduced herself with a firm handshake and a tablet already open in her other hand. She was in her early 40s, precise, without being cold, the kind of person who speaks in complete sentences, even when the room is tense. I oversee fraud review for this region, she said, taking the chair beside Mark's desk. Ms. Pierce, I'm going to walk through the application trail. My parents remained seated along the mill. My father's arms were crossed. My mother's purse rested neatly in her lap, as if we were waiting for a mortgage pre-approval instead of an investigation. Erica tapped the screen, and the monitor refreshed. The business rewards card was submitted online 20 days ago, she said. The personal guarantee field contains your social security number and date of birth. Those match our existing records. I did not react. That part I already knew. What flagged the file, she continued, was the device fingerprint and behavioral signature. My father let out a short laugh. Behavioral signature, he repeated. She's not a criminal mastermind. She applied for a card. Erica did not look at him. Every digital submission creates a device. Profile, she said evenly. Operating system, browser, build, screen resolution, security certificate. Ms. Pierce's historical logins from her personal accounts have been consistent for years. She swiped once. This application was submitted from a desktop environment using a fixed Ethernet connection, Windows 11 Enterprise build, and a browser configuration that does not match any device previously associated with her profile. I felt the faintest shift in the air, like pressure before a storm. I don't own a desktop, I said. I use a MacBook, and my accounts are accessed through two-factor authentication. Erica nodded. The two-factor codes were sent to the recovery number listed on the application. That number belongs to Linda Pierce. The room was very quiet after that. My mother inhaled slow and steady. We were helping, she said. Hannah doesn't check her phone during work hours. Erica tapped again. There is more, she said. The recovery email on file was changed during submission. It's tied to a commercial mailbox address on Capitol Boulevard. That mailbox is registered to Pierce Equipment Repair. Mark folded his hands on the desk. My father's jaw tightened, but he did not interrupt this time. Erica continued. The card was approved within 48 hours due to the existing relationship with the bank and the personal guarantee. Physical statements were redirected to that mailbox. Digital alerts were routed through the updated recovery contact. I thought of every month I had opened my primary checking app and seen nothing unusual. No missed payments, no alerts. You said there were charges, I said. Erica pulled up a transaction summary. The list was not filled with dinners or vacations. It was vendor deposits, equipment suppliers, commercial shelving, a forklift distributor in Durham, and then highlighted in pending status, a transfer request for $40,000 labeled lease deposit. My father shifted forward slightly. That's inventory, he said. That's growth. I did not look at him. When was the transfer scheduled? I asked. Last night, Erica replied. It triggered an internal review because of the amount and the destination account being newly associated. That's why the freeze went into effect at 6:15 this morning. 6:15, before I even stopped for gas. Erica zoomed in on the submission log one final time. The IP address used to file the application, she said, is registered to a business internet account under the name Pierce Equipment Repair. I felt something inside me settle into clarity. Not rage, not yet. Just the weight of something that could be printed. I want copies of the submission log, I said, including the device profile and IP registration. Erica met my eyes. If we move forward with formal documentation, She said this leaves the realm of internal correction. I placed my blue folder on Mark's desk and opened it. I understand, I said. The pending transfer was not abstract. It had a name. Erica expanded the transaction detail, and the beneficiary field filled the center of the screen in clean corporate lettering. The receiving account belonged to a commercial leasing company on Atlantic Avenue. The memo line read, "Warehouse Expansion Deposit." Pierce Equipment Repair had been talking about expanding for 3 years. My father called it modernization. My mother called it sustainability. I had called it risk. We've outgrown the current space, my father said now, as if this were a board meeting instead of a flagged fraud file. The new warehouse doubles our storage and gives us a service bay for heavy equipment. It's the only way to compete. I remembered the Sunday dinners where spreadsheets replaced conversation. The subtle way the topic always circled back to capital. The way my refusal to co-sign last year's equipment note had been framed as lack of faith. "You told me you secured a line of credit through your vendor," I said, not looking at him. "We did," my mother replied quickly. But the terms tightened. Interest jumped. We needed something flexible to bridge the deposit. Bridge. That word again. Erica scrolled further down. The initial charges, she said, were vendor deposits, shelving systems, pallet racks, and a forklift distributor in Durham. 58,000 has already posted. Posted, not pending. The $40,000 lease transfer had been the final piece. The system caught that one. If the freeze hadn't triggered this morning, I asked, would the lease deposit have cleared? Yes, Erica said. Based on the authorization sequence, the transfer would have completed. I pictured the new warehouse lease, signed in ink. The forklift unloading equipment paid for with my name. I pictured myself receiving a notice weeks from now, long after the credit line was exhausted. "You would have told me eventually," I said quietly. My father did not answer directly. "Hannah, you're not a victim here. You're family. The business supports all of us. This is about long-term stability." Long-term stability had always required my short-term silence. Mark leaned forward, his voice careful. "The account freeze is comprehensive," he said. "No additional transactions can process. However, until we complete the formal review, the balance remains active under Ms. Pierce's profile." Active. The word pressed against my ribs. "So, the debt exists," I said, "even if the final transfer doesn't." "Yes," Erica replied. "The posted charges are live. Reversals require fraud determination." Fraud determination. My mother's composure slipped for a fraction of a second. "Hannah, don't say that word," she whispered. "You're making this sound criminal." The room felt smaller. I thought about the credit freeze letters inside my blue folder. The certified confirmations I had kept precisely for this reason. The years I spent building a clean file because I understood how quickly numbers can trap you. "If I don't authorize anything," I said to Mark, "what happens next?" He met my eyes. "The file remains frozen," he said. "We escalate to full fraud review. That involves documentation, affidavit, and external reporting obligations." External. My father straightened. "You're not going to drag regulators into this," he said. "We can restructure the balance internally. I'll sign a repayment agreement. But the personal guarantee is mine," I said. No one answered that. Outside the office window, customers moved through the lobby, unaware that a business expansion and a family history were balanced on a flagged transaction. The warehouse on Atlantic Avenue did not yet belong to Pierce Equipment, but it was close enough to feel real. And the longer I sat there, the more I understood that if I hesitated, it would become real without me ever saying yes. Erica placed the fraud affidavit on the desk between us as if it were something breakable. It was 3 pages long. Clean. Formal. At the top, my full legal name appeared in bold, followed by the words, Statement of Identity Theft. If you sign this, she said calmly, we initiate a formal fraud determination. That includes internal review, regulatory reporting requirements, and potential law enforcement referral. There is no informal resolution once it's filed. No informal resolution. My mother leaned forward first. Hannah, don't, she said quietly. We can fix this without turning it into a case file. My father's tone shifted from irritation to persuasion. You sign, that he said, tapping the edge of the desk, and regulators get involved. Vendors get nervous. Our accounts could be audited. You think that won't affect you? It was the first time he framed it as something that could hurt me. Mark remained silent, hands folded, allowing the weight of the document to sit where it belonged. The $58,000 already posted, I said to Erica. If I don't sign, the balance remains tied to your profile pending repayment, she replied. You would be legally responsible under the personal guarantee while we continue internal review. That could take months. Interest accruing, utilization spiking. My credit score bending under something I never agreed to carry. My mother reached across the desk as if to take my hand. I stepped back before she could touch me. We will cover the minimum payments, she said quickly. We'll draft a schedule. Once the warehouse is operational, cash flow improves. You'll see this was temporary. Temporary had lasted my entire adult life. I opened my blue folder and removed the certified credit freeze confirmations, laying them beside the affidavit. The paper felt steady under my fingers. I locked my credit to prevent exactly this, I said. You bypassed it. We didn't bypass anything, my father snapped. The bank approved it. Because the recovery information was changed, Erica said evenly. The silence that followed was not loud, but it was final. My father adjusted his posture, recalculating. Hannah, he said, lowering his voice, families solve things internally. You don't escalate. You don't humiliate. Humiliate. The word sat between us, heavier than debt. I'm not trying to humiliate anyone, I said. I'm trying to protect myself. My mother's composure cracked for the first time. Protect yourself from your own parents, she asked, her voice thin. After everything we built had never included my name on the deed. Erica slid a pen toward me. If you choose to proceed, she said, we'll assign a case number immediately. We will also remove all shared contact information from your profile and apply additional security restrictions. My father's jaw tightened. Think carefully, he said. Once this becomes fraud, it doesn't shrink back into family. I looked at the line where my signature belonged. I thought about the Atlantic Avenue warehouse, the forklift in Durham, the mailbox on Capitol Boulevard, the device profile that did not belong to me. I thought about being 55 one day, explaining to a lender why my credit report showed a business collapse I never approved. Silence had protected them for years. It had never protected me. I signed. The ink did not shake. Erica turned the document toward herself and began initialing the verification sections. Mark picked up his phone to log the formal escalation. My mother covered her mouth with her hand. My father stared at the affidavit as if it had betrayed him. This is not reversible, he said quietly. No, I answered. It wasn't. The moment my signature dried, the room changed. Erica stood and stepped out to initiate the formal fraud entry in the system. Mark remained seated, already typing his posture, no longer cautious, but procedural. The file was no longer a conversation. It was a case. My father let out a slow breath through his nose. You've made your point, he said. Now, call it off. I can't, Mark replied before I had to. The affidavit has been submitted. A case number is being generated. Case number. It sounded small, administrative, but I understood what it meant. A permanent record that could not be erased with apology. Erica returned with a printed sheet and set it in front of me. FR-21974, she said. That is your formal fraud reference. All documentation from this point forward will be tied to that number. I slid the paper into my blue folder beside the freeze confirmations. I also need to update every access point I said. Remove the recovery phone and email immediately. Lock the profile under enhanced verification. No in-branch overrides without biometric confirmation. Mark nodded once. We'll place a dual authentication hold and restrict any third-party inquiry. My father leaned forward sharply. Third party, he repeated. We're not strangers. We're her parents. Erica met his eyes without hostility. Sir, as of 10:42 this morning, the primary account holder has declared identity theft. We treat all non-account holders as external parties. External parties. My mother flinched at that. Hannah, she said, her voice thin and urgent. Now, you're overcorrecting. You've always been intense about paperwork. This doesn't require scorched earth. I looked at her steadily. It requires accuracy. Mark's desk phone rang. He answered, listened briefly, and covered the receiver with his hand. The compliance team has logged the file, he said. They've also flagged the related business rewards account for expanded review. Related. My father straightened in his chair. What does that mean? It means, Mark said carefully, any connected accounts under Pierce Equipment Repair may be examined for irregularities. The first crack in his confidence appeared. You can't freeze operational accounts over a misunderstanding, he said. No accounts have been frozen at this time, Erica clarified. But the review process is standard when a personal guarantee is disputed. Disputed. The words were clinical, but their implications were not. My phone vibrated in my hand. The alert banner was from a regional equipment lender I recognized by name. It read, Confirmation, Required Personal Guarantee Submission. I felt the air leave my lungs. I didn't authorize anything else, I said quietly. My father's gaze flickered just for a second. Open it, Erica said. I tapped the notification. The email preview showed a financing request for heavy machinery submitted 2 days earlier, listing me as guarantor. This is separate from the bank, Mark said, reading over my shoulder. Different institution. I looked up at my parents. Did you submit this? I asked. My father's expression hardened into defense. We're restructuring inventory, he said. It's routine. With my name, I asked. My mother spoke quickly. It was precautionary. We assumed you'd agree. It hasn't been finalized. Precautionary. The case number in my folder suddenly felt less like a document and more like a line drawn in ink. I need a copy of that submission as well, I said to Erica. And I want a police report filed today. My mother gasped. Police. It's required to protect my credit across institutions, I replied. This was no longer about one warehouse. It was about whether my name belonged to me. Erica nodded. We can provide supporting documentation for law enforcement. My father stared at me as if he were seeing someone unfamiliar. You're willing to damage your own family's reputation, he said quietly. I closed the blue folder and held it against my chest. No, I said. I'm protecting my own. By early afternoon, I was sitting in my car, in the bank parking lot, engine off, blue folder, open on my lap. The sun had shifted. The morning felt distant, like something that had happened weeks ago instead of hours. I called the number in the lender's email. Daniel Ortiz, Commercial Risk Review, the man answered. His voice was steady, practiced. Not surprised. My name is Hannah Pierce, I said. I'm calling regarding a personal guarantee submission under my name for heavy equipment financing. There was a pause as he pulled up the file. Yes, Ms. Pierce, he said. We received a signed guarantee tied to Pierce Equipment Repair 2 days ago. We were waiting on final income verification before releasing funds. I did not sign that guarantee, I said. I have an active fraud case with Piedmont Federal. I can provide the case number and documentation. Another pause. Longer this time. I'll need that case number, Daniel said. His tone shifted from neutral to alert. If a guarantor disputes authorization, we freeze processing immediately. I read him the number from the top sheet in my folder. Inside the bank, through the glass, I could see my parents, still in Mark's office. My father was standing now pacing. My mother sat rigidly, hands clasped. Ms. Pierce. Daniel continued. The submission includes a digital signature and a scanned driver's license. My license, I asked. Yes, attached to the guarantee packet. A slow chill moved through me. I will email you a written dispute and a copy of my police report once it's filed, I said. Do not release any funds. Understood, he replied. We're flagging the file. When I hung up, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voicemail notification. From my father. I listened. Hannah, he said, voice controlled but tight. You're overreacting. Calling lenders, mentioning police. Do you understand what that does to a business? You're creating panic. I deleted the message without responding. A text followed almost immediately. If you push this, vendors will cut credit lines. That affects payroll. Payroll. For a moment, I pictured the mechanics who had worked for my father for decades. Men in their 50s and 60s who trusted him. Men who had watched me grow up around tool chests and hydraulic lifts. The guilt hit fast, sharp. Then I remembered the forklift deposit, the redirected statements, the device profile that wasn't mine. Inside the bank, the office door opened. My father stepped into the lobby, phone in hand, scanning for me. His eyes landed on my car. He walked toward it. I rolled the window down halfway. You're making a mistake, he said, keeping his voice low. Daniel Ortiz just called me. He said you disputed the guarantee. Yes, I said. You don't understand the domino effect, he continued. When lenders see fraud attached to a business file, they tighten everything. Suppliers get nervous. Insurance carriers reevaluate. I understand consequences. I said, that's why I didn't sign anything. He leaned closer to the window. If Pierce Equipment collapses because you panicked, he said quietly, that's on you. For a second, the words landed exactly where he intended. Collapse. Failure. Blame. I looked at him through the half-open glass. It collapses if it was built on my name, without permission, I said. His jaw flexed. You think you're protecting yourself, he said. But you're isolating yourself. He stepped back before I could answer. As he walked toward his truck, my phone vibrated again. A confirmation email from Daniel Ortiz. Financing application status. Suspended pending fraud review. The word suspended did not feel like victory. It felt like escalation. I closed the blue folder and started the engine. This was no longer a single account freeze. It was a widening perimeter. The following morning, Wednesday, I was back at Piedmont Federal by 9:15 with a police report number written in black ink across the top of my blue folder. I had not slept much, not because I doubted what I had done, but because I finally understood the scale of it. Erica met me in the conference room this time, not Mark's office. The shift in setting felt deliberate, more formal, less personal. We received confirmation from the equipment lender, she said, sliding a thin stack of printed emails across the table. They suspended the financing application pending fraud review. They also forwarded us a copy of the submission packet. I opened it. There was my name, my social security number, my scanned driver's license. But the signature on the guarantee line was not mine. It was close, practiced, slightly heavier at the end of the last letter. Device logs matched the original application source. Erica continued. Same IP registration, tied to Pierce Equipment's office network. It wasn't chaos anymore. It was repetition. Has your compliance team contacted my parents? I asked. Yes, she said. They were notified that the personal guarantee is under dispute and that additional documentation has been requested. They responded through counsel. Through counsel. I felt that settle. What did they say? That the submission was made with your verbal authorization, Erica replied. They claim you agreed to support restructuring and later changed your position. A clean narrative. Calm, plausible to someone who didn't know the pattern. I leaned back in my chair. They're reframing it as a family disagreement, I said. Yes, Erica answered. But digital records don't recognize family context. They recognize authorization. That was the first moment I felt something like steadiness return. I opened my folder and pulled out the original credit freeze confirmations again. I want a full, certified copy of the device fingerprint analysis, I said, including timestamp differentials between my historical login behavior and the submission windows. Erica nodded slowly. You work in compliance, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Then you know this becomes less about emotion and more about sequence. Sequence. That word mattered. The equipment lender had forwarded not just the guarantee, but the submission timeline. The application was initiated on Monday evening. The final upload occurred at 8:47 p.m. At 8:47 on Monday, I had been on a Zoom call with my regional director and 10 other staff members. The meeting invite was still in my calendar. I pulled up my phone and scrolled. There it was. Logged. Recorded. They're assuming I can't prove where I was, I said quietly. Erica looked at the timestamp and then at me. Can you? She asked. Yes. The room was quiet for a moment. They escalated quickly when you disputed the bank account, Erica said. That suggests urgency. Or exposure, I replied. She didn't disagree. Compliance is compiling the full packet for financial crimes review, she said. No determinations have been made yet. Not yet. That was the truth. I slid the lender's submission copy back into my folder and closed it carefully. For the first time since 9:30 the day before, I didn't feel cornered. I felt structured. They thought if they moved fast enough, I said I wouldn't catch the timing. Erica gave a small nod. Timing, she said, is usually where stories fall apart. As I left the bank, my phone vibrated again. An email from Daniel Ortiz. Additional review. Triggered submission. Timeline. Discrepancy. Identified. I sat in my car and read it twice. This wasn't justice. Not yet. But the room was no longer tilting. On Friday morning, I received a letter from Piedmont Federal in a plain white envelope with my name printed in the bank's standard font. I stood at my kitchen counter and opened it with a butter knife, careful not to tear the paper. Habit. Inside was a formal notice tied to FR 21974. It stated that the $120,000 business credit balance had been removed from my consumer profile, pending final determination, and that my accounts had been reissued under new credentials with enhanced verification. It also confirmed that the warehouse deposit transfer had been permanently canceled, removed, pending final determination. Not a victory lap, not closure, but a door no longer pressed against my chest. I slid the letter into the blue folder and exhaled once slow. A second envelope arrived that afternoon, this one from a credit bureau. It was the kind of mail most people throw away without reading. I read every word. My identity theft report had been recorded. A fraud alert was active. Disputes were open. My file was flagged to require additional verification for any new lending inquiry. It was protection, but it also felt like a scar. I did not hear from my parents directly. Not a call, not a text. Instead, I heard from my father's world. A vendor representative I vaguely knew from years ago left a voicemail on my work phone asking if Pierce Equipment was still in good standing because their account was showing a hold. Then, on Sunday evening, Daniel Ortiz emailed me again. We have received additional documentation requests from a financial crimes reviewer. Financing remains suspended. Please do not contact the applicant directly. Financial crimes reviewer. That phrase had weight. On Monday, Mark called. His tone was polite, careful, but different than the first day. "Hannah," he said, "I need to notify you that our compliance team expanded the inquiry because your personal guarantee was used and because a commercial mailbox redirect was involved. The bank is obligated to share documentation with an external investigative unit." External. I didn't ask which unit. I didn't need the name to understand the momentum. "What about Pierce Equipment accounts?" I asked. Mark paused. "I can't discuss their banking specifics," he said, "but I can tell you the business expansion payments tied to the Atlantic Avenue lease are not proceeding through our institution. Not proceeding." The warehouse on Atlantic Avenue was slipping out of their hands. That evening, my mother finally left a voicemail. Her voice was soft, controlled, as if she were recording a message for a church prayer line. "Hannah, please," she said. "Your father is under tremendous stress. The employees are scared. The supplier called. People talk. If you've made your point, can we stop now? Stop now." As if this were a disagreement over tone, not a series of submitted documents. I sat at my kitchen table, phone face down, blue folder open beside my plate. The papers inside were neat, time-stamped, certified, unemotional. I realized something then that I hadn't allowed myself to name. They weren't asking for forgiveness. They were asking for the system to forget. And the system doesn't forget. Not when the numbers line up. Not when the timestamps match. I didn't call her back. I turned the folder's top sheet over and wrote one sentence for myself in the margin. "This ends with process, not pleading." On Tuesday morning, another email arrived. Piedmont Federal Notice of Evidence Transfer to Investigative Review. The perimeter was no longer widening. It was closing. 2 weeks after the morning my debit card was declined, I sat in a small office on Fayetteville Street, across from Rebecca Lawson, the attorney I hired to make sure my life could not be accessed through family business ever again. Rebecca was in her late 40s, practical, unromantic, the kind of lawyer who spoke in short phrases and asked for dates, not feelings. She had already reviewed my police report, the bank's fraud reference, and the lender's suspended guarantee packet. "They used your identity in a way that creates ongoing risk," she said, sliding a one-page petition toward me. "This isn't about whether you love your parents. It's about whether they can reach you through institutions." The protective order was narrow and specific. No financial contact, no impersonation, no third-party inquiries, no attempts to obtain information through my employer, my bank, or any lender. It was a boundary written in legal language. I signed, the same steady hand I'd used on the fraud affidavit. 3 days later, the court clerk emailed the stamped acknowledgement. The judge had granted it without a hearing after reviewing the documentation. I read the PDF twice, then once more, because I needed my brain to accept that it was real. That afternoon, Mark Delaney called. "Hannah, he said I wanted you to hear it from me. Compliance has finalized the fraud determination. The business credit line is confirmed unauthorized. You owe nothing. The bank is pursuing restitution through the appropriate process. Confirmed unauthorized. You owe nothing." It should have felt like fireworks. It didn't. It felt like a heavy door closing finally, and the sound echoing through a quiet house. My parents didn't call after that. They couldn't. The order made sure of it. But information still traveled. A week later, an old family friend left a message saying Pierce Equipment was going through something, that the warehouse expansion had fallen apart, that vendors had tightened terms. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to picture it to understand the shape of it. Karma didn't arrive as a dramatic moment. It arrived as paperwork, as canceled plans, as a business built on borrowed identity, meeting the first hard wall it couldn't charm. On a Saturday morning, I updated the things I had avoided for years. I changed my beneficiaries. I replaced my emergency contacts. I added a credit monitoring lock that required my physical verification for any new lending inquiry. I wrote a simple will with Rebecca's guidance, because adults don't leave their futures to chance or guilt. Then, I took my blue folder out on the kitchen table. The case number, the letters, the stamped order, the time stamps, the proof. I carried it to the small wall safe in my home office, the one I'd used mostly for my passport and a spare key. I slid the folder inside, closed the door, and turned the dial until it clicked. The click was not celebration. It was stability. I stood there for a long moment, hand resting on the safe, and I realized the hardest part of this wasn't the fraud file or the investigations. It was accepting that my parents had chosen access over relationship, and that healing meant I had to choose myself over the version of family I kept trying to earn. I turned off the office light, walked back into the quiet of my home, and made coffee without checking my phone. If you've ever had to draw a boundary with people you were taught to protect, I'd love to hear how you handled it. Would you have reported it or tried to keep it inside the family if this story stayed with you? You can like and follow for more real-world justice and healing, and there's another story waiting when you're ready.